This is Talk Anime Podcast, episode number 15, Sunday Without God. As I mentioned, we're covering the good old, I guess it's a classic. It was a very, very short lived one season anime that originally premiered back in good old 2010 during that season, which is when I originally watched it. It was originally based on 9 light novels, and it actually has a manga that was spun out, but the manga was canceled, and then it had a 12-episode anime, which was also canceled, kind of, or ended. But we'll get into that. Anyways, a brief summary of the story that we're going to be talking about. It is set in a fictional world where 15 years earlier, humans lost the ability to have children and to die. So those who died continue to exist regardless of injury or decay, and the whole idea is that God abandoned the world, and his final gift was gravekeepers, which were people that had the ability to actually put those living dead to rest. And the story focuses on 12-year-old I, who is a gravekeeper. So, with all of that background information out of the way, let me hear your overall impressions, Noob.
Uh, Overall impressions. When I started it, I was kind of confused, and the more I watched it, the more I ended up liking it. I will say this much about anybody watching it: definitely might watch more than the first few episodes. It's something that was kind of like it wasn't necessarily hard for me to get into, but it was something that I had to have a lot of patience to get into. So it's not something that you're just going to, or at least I wasn't like completely invested from the beginning. It took me a while to kind of figure out what was going on, what the world was like, and stuff like that. But overall, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you in some ways. Honestly, I haven't watched this in a long time. Probably seen the show. This is my third time watching it. Watched it by myself when it came out. Watched it with a friend who had, like, I guess read the manga and then they never seen the anime, and I watched it with them. They hated it. They said it was there was garbage and that it was terrible in every way. Um,
Really?
I
I
disagree
mean,
with that. I mean,
yeah, I could honestly
well,
say if
well,
somebody who's watched it all the way through, even if you didn't leave it like liking it, I think most people would at least be able to appreciate why other people do like it. I wouldn't say this is by any means. I could understand
well,
why people wouldn't like this, but I couldn't understand why anybody would just say it was just garbage.
yeah. So like, well, I guess just to like keep it short with my overall impression, I would say my overall impression of the show, it kind of feels like a mix match of a bunch of different anime plots, and none of them fully are fledged out. And like each segment, like each arc, if you will, like mini arc, feels like its own anime. Which there's a lot of reasons for that we can definitely get into probably early into this, just to kind of give context of like how this show is in this form, because we've kind of talked about like anime adaptations of things and like how it's done well, how it's done bad, and I think this show can really highlight a lot of that. But with that, I still think it's a creative show, which you never know what's going to happen next in this show. I wouldn't say this is one show you can't really predict what's going to happen in the next episode because you could be like, all right, the show's going in this direction, and then it completely changes gears and you have no idea what the fuck is happening in the next episode, and it feels like you're watching almost a different show. So for that aspect alone, it kind of reminds me of something kind of like Doctor Who or Star Trek, or even like
Yeah.
something like that, where it's kind of like there's just like a random thing that happens, and like the gang is all, maybe even Scooby Doo a little bit. Like, I don't know. It has that vibe where it's like each episode is just taking you to like a new story, which it that obviously allows them to do a lot of creative things
You
with
know what?
it.
It's funny you say that because that was kind of what I was thinking too when I was watching. It's like it's like every 3 or 4 episodes is like a new episode. So it's like basically like this
Yeah.
anime was like 3 or 4 2-hour long episodes that was split into like
Yeah. Yeah. And it like they have these mini arcs, but with all that said, I still think it's a creative show. Like a lot of people that like I've talked to, that I've never heard, like this might be the most underrated anime we've covered up till now. So underrated, in fact, Noob and Solo are the proud owners and moderators of the subreddit dedicated to Sunday Without a God because there were such few fans there that we were able to just take it over. So, if you're listening to this and you like the show, go over to the subreddit Sunday Without a God and post your opinions or thoughts about the show
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
yeah, why not? We like, but anyways, that's how underrated this show is. But surprisingly enough, Crunchyroll fans gave it a 4.4. So, even though it's underrated, the people that have watched it,
Is that like a 4.4 out of 5?
yeah, on the Crunchyroll scale. So, like, the user reviews are across the board. This show does have pretty decent user reviews from people that have watched it. I think a lot of criticism comes from people that didn't like, well, wanted more, I think, or people that expected something else. But with all that said, I mean, I think we should just get into the story and the characters and the world and what all of it means. Like, what are you thinking? How should we approach
The
this? There's
Well, I guess we could
so
start
much
with
here.
the story. I What you were saying earlier about you're not going to be able to tell what happens next. I think the
Well,
beginning, how this anime starts, is like the perfect embodiment of that. Where
yeah.
I thought that this was going to, I mean, because I didn't read. I mean, you told me about it a little bit, but I knew going into the show that people just weren't gonna die, or people couldn't die, or whatever. And so I was watching it with that, oh, this must be just people like with a little slice of life, but they can't die. So it's about how they live their lives and stuff. And then, like, I think by the end of the first episode or the second episode, you find like, oh, everybody she was raised around was dead the entire time. So, and I was like, oh, this just
Well,
changed completely.
like,
So,
yeah, and like, God, there's just that's why I wanted to talk about the show because it's like there's so much to get into. I mean, even to this day, as someone who I'll let you know, like, I have read the manga, I have watched every episode 3 times, I have uh, read parts of the light novels that have been translated, and I know in depth knowledge and a lot of information about the light novels and where things go. To this day, I do not see why being dead is so bad. Like they act like being dead is so bad,
yeah,
and I
being
still don't fully get it. I don't get it. I
Being
don't.
dead was I could understand why being dead was kind of like
Well,
it was like a downside for the people in that village, but for the people in or like Ortis or whatever,
yeah,
those people have fully embraced being dead. They've got technology that like preserves the bodies and stuff. Whereas the people in her village, you remember in like I think it was like the first episode, she goes up to her like surrogate mother and she hugs her and she's like, "Why do you smell so funny?" And then the lady just slaps her, like, "Oh, that's my perfume."
yeah.
And at first, I didn't pay too much attention to it, but then you find out later, I was like, they don't actually have a way of preserving their bodies in that village, so they were probably just trying to find ways to mask their scent and, like make the maybe wearing like a lot of makeup or
Yeah,
something. I don't know what they were doing to
it's
make
kind of a
themselves.
weird concept of like I mean they're essentially like zombies, but then they're kind of like they don't really become zombies unless they let their body decay to a certain point, but then like keeping your body from decaying is the hardest thing. Like I know when I first watched the show I was definitely very confused about it. Um just because, her father, that character, he's introduced as like an immortal character and you're like but you also have the premise that everyone's immortal so it's a little confusing except the difference is that he actually doesn't die and start decaying he just
Yeah, like
he's never
everybody else
yeah
can die, but like they can live on after they're dead.
exactly so like that's like the distinction I guess and like I don't know.
But, yeah, I kind of, like, get what you're coming from because there's, like
It was just
until much
confusing
later
to
on,
me
there's, like,
at
really not
first.
a whole lot of distinction between the living and the dead. Well, I guess that with the
Well,
exception
then
of that
there's
first
like then
episode
there's
where
like the character like that one kid that you meet in the village who was like summoned by some kind of ritual, and he's like not living, but he's technically dead. And then there's the one chick who's like living, but she's like a goddess. But like, and then there's like people with power. Like, there's just the show just goes into so many different direction. It really, because every time you watch it, like a part of the show, you're like, okay, the show's headed in this direction. And then you just watch the next episode or the next like mini arc, and it just completely does a 180 into a direction like you could not even possibly have predicted. Like,
Yeah, I do like how those mini arcs were organized though, because it I think in a way it made it easier for the show to like flow, like where you it wasn't just trying to build up this one whole arc the whole time, which I don't think with like I don't think it really established an overarching plot until actually it never really did. The mini arcs gives you time to really get to know the characters introduced in those individual arcs. The first arc kind of focused on introducing the characters in the world, but it gives you a lot of time to really get to know Hampney, uh, which he was kind of a cool character. I thought he was going to be. At the start, I thought the way it was going is she was just going to be following Hampney, like on and they were going to go discover the world, and over
yeah,
time she was going to discover the secret that the village was hiding from her, and then
yeah.
she kind of ends up discovering it really
This
quickly, and then
this anime does have like it feels like the anime should be like a lot longer kind of vibe, you know? Like it doesn't feel like a 12 episode anime, especially at the beginning.
yeah, and
Like it
I've
feels like
heard.
you're about to go on like a grand adventure across the world or something, like a shonen type stuff story almost.
Yeah. I mean, I was really upset too when oh, actually I was both happy and upset at Hampton's death.
Yeah,
So you were thinking that he was he finally gets reunited with his daughter, but then you learn from the time that he spent captured by those thugs that he his wish he told her I that his wish was to die, but his wish was to die like happy, surrounded by his child and stuff. And so his wish was basically he thought his wish was never going to come true, so he was just going to like live forever, and he didn't want to be the last person left alive. And then that was a really nice twist how him and I discovered that they were father and daughter. I like that twist. I thought it was pretty awesome.
yeah. I interesting. Where did you watch this? And did you watch it sub or dub?
I watched it dubbed.
Got it.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
hit
even
up
know
the
a dub
dub
of this
on it.
was available, to be honest, until after. I watched this on
Yeah.
Crunchyroll. The interesting about Crunchyroll is that, this was a seasonal anime that was on Crunchyroll, so it has the comments from when this was originally premiering, like live, and I was looking at those. Like, everyone's like, how are they gonna do me like this? He's in the intro song, and they killed him off in episode 3. Like,
Yeah. Oh, uh, the intro doesn't really actually, I guess in the intro he's like I think the
he's
only
half
person
the
who has
intro
his
song,
back.
dude. Like, half the marketing of this show is, like, with him in it.
You actually think for a while that he's one of the main characters, and then they just kill him off and like, wait, what? Well, where's this going? It
Well,
kind of
like,
makes you just want to keep watching just to figure out what the hell they were even thinking.
okay.
So,
So
uh,
before we get further into it, I do want to talk about the kind of elephant in the room and kind of what we've been like tippy toeing at. Like that is kind of like why this show is like this. So I'm gonna tell you some like facts about the show, and let's just talk about how it makes sense. So like first off, this is a 12 episode anime with one OVA. Did you watch the OVA by the way?
no,
Okay.
I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, it's a nice little OVA. I think it's worth watching. It's like you just get like a little flashback scene, so you get to see where Alice meets her father. You get to see,
Wait. Alice doesn't meet her father.
yeah, he does in this flashback. Like it's a
When?
background, a memory scene. You gotta watch the OVA, man. It's like three like mini episodes, and then like it also has how
Wait, was
her,
this before he Alice met her? Because uh, she
yeah,
doesn't meet
it was.
Alice until after her father dies.
Yeah, yeah, it was before, way before that. It also shows how her father meets her mother. You also get to see the other mini story is just a spa episode. They're all naked
What?
in a sauna together episode.
So you get to see some like Scar fan service.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't I want to just say it up front, but I think we can both agree that Scar is definitely best girl.
Well, every other girl's like 10, so I would I would say so. Um,
I guess in this case, Scar is the only girl.
man, I'm not
I
into
mean,
the what are these things? What are the little
like
baby people called?
lolly.
Yeah, lolly bullshit. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I guess if you're into the lolly shit, then this is cool. But yeah, not for me, not for me. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So 12 episodes. So the manga that came out before this was actually canceled. So the manga is 28 chapters. If you had to guess, of the 28 chapters, how many of those do you think was adapted into this anime?
like 28 of them,
That's correct, but how many episodes do you think that fills up in time?
all 12.
It is actually the first 3 episodes.
Wait, the first 3 episodes covers the entire manga.
Yes, the manga ends with her father dying, and then there's like a small little like mini arc after that, which is basically kind of what it's like in between episode 4, like just filler bullshit. Basically, that's the manga. Nothing. So the manga basically
The
28
manga didn't come.
chapters.
It was based on like a light novel before the manga,
Yes, so
right?
that's what I'm getting to. So the manga, which is the way the process went, it was there's nine light novels. There was a manga, and then there's this anime. So the manga only got to about what was episode 3, right? And the manga covers roughly light novel number 1. So all of the manga is one light novel. The first 3 episodes is one light novel. By the end of this anime, you are on light novel 5 out of the 9 for the complete series.
So
So
we need a season 2, is what you're
so
saying.
with knowing all of that, it's safe to assume if 28 manga chapters are in one light novel, that's 28 times 5 is how many chapters worth of potential manga they could have adapted for this series. So this is 12 episodes, and I don't know, do you have the math on that? That is a lot.
Mm,
A
That's a
lot.
lot of math,
That
and
what is that? Well, let's round it to
it's
30
like
times.
140.
Yeah. So that could have been like an entire series on its own. Like if they finished producing the manga, like, and they adapted about that much worth of content into 12 episodes.
I
So
mean,
that's kind of like gives you an idea of why this show kind of feels the way it does in a lot of ways, because they do have a lot more in between time in the light novels and in the manga, like of just exploring the characters a little bit more.
well,
Um,
I did feel like by the end of it that we definitely need a season 2 because it does end with a satisfying ending and stuff, but it never got to the point where I was going to go save the world, which I don't know what she was going to do to save the world. She saved Alice's world, I guess, because he said only thing he wanted to do to save the world is I'm going to save the world by destroying the world, and they technically did that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, that was
But kind of all of that said, I mean, knowing all of that, I don't think it takes away from the show, but it definitely, even people that saw this ending, a lot of people were confused about the ending. If you just wanted to talk about the ending,
Uh,
a
oh
lot of
yeah,
people were
let's talk
confused.
about that because the ending was kind of something that confused me.
Mm.
Alice was already dead for 14 years at that point, right? So is he alive or is he dead at the end?
He's alive.
How? Like it never said at any point in this
Well,
anime that
yeah.
gravekeepers had the ability to bring people back to life.
No, no. What happens canonically, since remember the manga didn't end, so the only answer that we have from this is actually in light novel 6.
Yo,
And
so you there?
yeah, can you not hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Uh,
Do you hear me okay?
yeah.
All right, so let
We
me
can
just
continue from where you were at.
yep. Okay. So in let me think of what I was saying. I lost my train of thought now. So oh yeah, so canonically, the only thing that we know since the manga ends so early is from the light novels. Now here's the problem with the light novels, right? The light novels are only translated none of them are translated officially. They're only fans translated. There was a fan translation project which did about up to the second or third light novel. And then all my other knowledge of light novels is based on people's reviews and like basically detailed summaries and descriptions of the light novels. So, with that said, and all of those don't even cover the final light novel. So to this day, the final novel number 9, I don't actually know how this series ends in the light novels because I've only found information up to 8. No one is given a shit enough to translate anything or review anything or to do anything in relation to light novel number 9. So it either is the worst ending of all time or no one gives a shit about it because every project, everything and revolves around the series has been completely abandoned by the English market, and I think unless you know someone who speaks Japanese and you can get a hold of the light novel, there's actually no way to possibly know how this ends. So, with that said, if
Well,
there's anyone who's Japanese that listens to this podcast, please send me a translation of light novel number 9 of this
where
series.
can they get light novel number 9 to even translate it? Is it like
I,
available
I,
online or?
it is available online. You can find like copies of it, but there was a translation project. It got like defunct. But anyways, so with that said, I do know what happens in light novel number 6. So light novel number 6 is what actually follows the series, and it is confirmed that Alice does in fact live, and the reason that he lives is that she wishes that he was alive, and God grants her wish.
I thought God was gone. How's God coming back to grant wishes?
God still makes miracles happen.
He, see, that's a little bit of, in my
Well,
opinion, some inconsistency. I thought God abandoned the world. That actually,
well,
but you know what? Hampney did say something about like that's not exactly what happened, but
yeah.
they never really say anything else about it. So
Well, the OVA talks a little bit more about like what his opinions on it. He thinks like it's kind of like it goes into his like monologue about how it's like when he meets her mom when he says like um maybe God like didn't truly abandon the world, maybe he just truly wanted to grant wishes and the wishes all kind of just backfired and made the world a fucking shitty place, which kind of makes sense. Which is interesting. I mean, like, there's so much like philosophy that could be analyzed in like what this show is trying to say with that whole concept. Like, because at the beginning you're led to believe, oh, like there was a grand event where like God literally like came out, but then later on it's established that
yeah,
definitely didn't actually happen that way, and
like
it
people
says
just
so.
all of a sudden notice that they just stopped dying, and
Yeah, so that's
that
how
was
it would
it.
actually happen. Is it's just like oh, everyone just stopped dying, and then all of this weird shit started happening. People's wishes started getting granted, and like the range at what those wishes means and how that comes about. Like there's so many unanswered questions in this world, like and where these powers come from, and like what it all means. Like there's a lot of questions. Like a lot of plot points left
I
undone.
I got
Like
another question, and maybe you could answer. How many wishes does each person get? Because it seems like everybody was able to make a wish and it came true. Does everybody only get one wish?
from what I've understood in the show, I think that is the case. So I think it's implied that I didn't ever have a wish until she wished for him to come back. So that was her wish, I guess. And then, I mean, God, there's just so many angles I want to go with it. But anyways, with that said, I guess that's all I have to say about the ending. Is that yes, canonically he does get brought back to life, and that actually is like a major theme in the sixth light novel. It actually covers kind of him reckoning with the fact that he is in fact buried and dead there. So there is a version of him physically that is buried there, but he is like reborn completely as like a new human. And it's actually
So now I'm even more confused than I was before I started asking.
yeah, so like it's not that he was resurrected so like he is like basically reborn. His body is still buried there. Like what she wishes is he was back to life, but it didn't like resurrect him. He's not undead. He literally is just a completely new person and like that's something that he has to reckon with in the light novel. So like what the next like I guess light novel and arcs cover after that, one of the major focuses is that he struggles with accepting that like he's the same person in a sense because he feels like a shell because like his purpose was like to free them, and he feels like since he did that, like him coming back, he wasn't supposed to come back. And then later on there's like a group of people that like capture him, and like there's like a trial with a judge, and the judge determines that like he like should be dead or some shit. It's actually ridiculous. And like the light novels are heavily criticized for it because they do kind of just like the crazy like nature of the show. Even though they're in a longer form in the light novels, it still maintains that like you never know what's going to happen. Like there's just random characters that show up every like story beat feels like a whole new story arc, and it does continue like that in the light novels going forward into the series. So
Actually, and there was one other question, and that was the a question I had about the grave keepers. They're like it's implied that they're not only just like a profession, but they're also like a species that
yeah,
is
yeah,
like
it's kind of interesting because like the one episode that like explains that there's just like one like gravekeeper that's duplicated a million times and like sent out in the world, it just opens a can of worms that I feel like there should have never even been like a can or worms anywhere around. What the
I
hell?
was like I
Like
like because
but some things are better off like when you think of gravekeepers are just kind of like
I wish
beings
they had
like
left that
angels
like more
or like
mysterious because when you like actually see it,
well
it
like
kind of it's almost comical how they're just like pops up
yeah,
out of
and like
nowhere.
okay, so like here's my problem
Uh,
with it, which as far as I know, which again, I have not fully read the light novels since there are no translations of them. I just know like from summaries and reviews of people that do speak Japanese that translated their reviews. That's the stuff I've looked into. From what I understand about what happens in the light novels, they never reckon the fact that her mom very well could have duplicates of her throughout the world the way that they're born. And they never like I don't know why they even
well,
introduced
so
that
like,
fact if they
but the thing is,
never expand on it.
if her mom could have duplicates, maybe the version of that gravekeeper that Hampney got with wasn't really her mom, but it was like somebody else that was part of that same series of clones or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know if that's like ever hinted. Maybe in the ninth novel. I've never heard anything mention of that ever again outside of this one portion in like that one episode. They never mention gravekeepers or that's like a biggest complaint from a lot of people is like the show starts off with a premise about gravekeepers, and her being a gravekeeper is like the most irrelevant thing like possible. She might as well like not even have a shovel. Like I don't think she does a single thing. like like
Well,
it.
she buries some people here and
Yeah,
there,
yeah, but in the manga,
but
like you.
without her shovel, it doesn't really matter whether she's a gravekeeper or not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the whole concept of like the gravekeeper and like the zombies and the dead and like they just like abandon that like in like it's nothing after like 5 minutes. Like they just like, all right, yeah, we're over it. We had that one arc. It's like, and then like they just have like all these rules with the gravekeepers and like then like gravekeepers are kind of like they're like unfeeling and then like they're
Yeah,
like
they're
they're
supposed to be unfeeling, but then you have people
and
like
then
her mom and then
yeah
Scar later on, which I would like to go off on a tangent for a second about Scar, in particular. Remember when they were in Orders, and Scar said that there's somebody calling out to me, and you find out that it's Eula's baby sister that just never aged because
yeah
she somehow as a baby just wished for time to stop or something.
yeah, and that
Which
plot line goes nowhere after that.
yeah, well, the thing is, um,
She just gets a baby for no
how is
reason. Like,
why did she just all of a sudden get the baby, and why did she just know that that baby was meant for her, just because like the voice was calling out to her, and then why on earth did Eula let like some like people who she literally knew for about a day or so, a day and a half maybe, she
yeah.
just let him be like, oh yeah, please take my baby sister with
Well, I
you and take
mean,
good care
she
of her.
like,
uh
well, her baby sister was alive, so she couldn't really be around her anyways.
Well, she
Which,
didn't know that her entire life because Eula didn't even know what her ability was.
yeah, God, there's so much to talk about with this show. Like, there's so much different. Like it literally feels like a different anime. Like each arc, like it really does to me. And
Yeah,
like
it's like each arc they had the
they
general
could have
idea of
they
where they
I feel
wanted to go, and
like
just like they just went.
each of those arcs they literally could have made a season like in those arcs and just expanded like shit that happened. I feel like they could have pulled it off. But of course that
Yeah,
didn't happen. But
I'm
regard
pretty sure the like the light novels may go into it a little bit more
especially
depth.
like the last arc felt like an entire anime like I've seen
It
before.
really did. Oh my god, the
Like I've
last arc
seen
was
that
like the
anime before.
part that made me love this anime. Because despite all the criticism I'm giving it now, which I think is all fair criticism, I ended up really falling in love with this anime because of that last arc with Alice and I forgot his friend's name.
Well, like
Uh,
so like for a lot of people, I guess like the most forgettable arc for me in this was the like when they were at like the
the
detention
school.
school. Yeah, like
Yeah.
not like the class at the end, but the detention school with the other chicks. Like that was just fucking. That felt like a filler arc.
It really did, and the part about it that really just kind of like felt like odd is that they give all these detail on all those other girls' backstories at the school, and then you don't ever see them again.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of
Uh,
that's what I'm saying. That's why like I compared it to like these like one-off type of like cartoons or like TV shows where it's like they have like an adventure. Like even like the way it was set up, it's like oh no, she got kidnapped at the beginning. Like, what shenanigans is gonna happen? And then at the end,
Actually, yeah, it
at,
felt comical. You're
yeah,
right.
it felt like a
I was
cartoon.
like,
It kind of felt
and
like Scooby Doo
she
cartoon to
thought
me.
that's how school was actually supposed to be because
Yeah,
that's what
and
Anthony told
then
her.
even at the end, he like just shows up in the van and he's like, "Oh, let me pick everyone up coincidentally right at the exit." Like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
and Scooby Dooby Doo.
it just felt
Scooby
like
Doo
they just
didn't
went on
happen,
this
but it should have.
random one-off adventure and they literally drop everyone off. Like the only purpose of that arc was to set up Alice and the D, what's her name, D, yeah,
Yeah.
like that was the
Uh,
only purpose. Is in like the thing is they could have set them up in a better way. I think I didn't know if I just didn't, I didn't
well,
really. I think that's the biggest like.
no, they started setting up Alice. Well, Alice and Dee are both introduced when they are leaving Ordis.
Yeah,
So
technically, they didn't really the whole that whole arc and even the final arc to set up. It was just random. Like they just randomly are there, and then they just like there was no foreshadowing to it. They're just like, all right, we're at the school now. Let me tell you what happened. Or how does that episode? The episode even starts with him like killing all his classmates or whatever.
yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, I'm
It kind of
interested.
felt like
You
a
got my attention, so
kind of
let's
felt
see where
like
this
the
goes.
intro of like a
But
Twilight Zone episode or something where it just starts with like something crazy happening and then like you make sense of it later. Like again, it's just kind of like that whole one-off type of vibe. Um
it was a definitely an interesting premise to start with, though. I
But
immediately I was
like
like, "Okay, you got my attention," and
that whole premise of that last arc could have been its own anime in itself. Like there's a bunch
I
of anime that is literally that's the whole like that very similar premise to just that, but it's a whole
well,
anime.
I will say this much about this anime, like, they could have probably just kept the first arc and the last arc and just skipped that whole school segment entirely, and I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have missed much
Well,
because
the
I think in
arc
this whole
with
time we've been talking, we
yeah.
haven't really talked much. We've probably talked about 2 minutes out of the whole time we've been going so far about that school arc because it was really that forgettable. I don't remember any of the characters from that arc.
Yeah. The
I vaguely
only
remember plot points that happened, but I
yeah.
just know that it was a transition from Ortis to Alice and Dee's arc.
Yeah, and the whole Ortis, the City of the Dead, I think that arc was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
I didn't like
The,
that we talked about other waifus. I guess your other waifu would be that like one cross man, cross woman character. I figured that would be your
um,
waifu.
well, half. Oh, actually, like 2/3 of him slash her are.
Well,
Uh,
there is
I
that
thought,
one
I thought,
form
I
where it's
thought, I
the two
thought, I
chicks
thought the
together, like the
yeah,
two
yeah. That's why I
chicks.
said 2/3. Like they're like interchangeable parts, or I'm not
Yeah,
sure. Wait, what is it like? Like they could just take a half of each body and just put it together whenever they feel like it, or
yeah,
how does
something
that
like
work?
that.
Are the
I
other halves of the body like attached to each other when they're not around?
I
So
don't know how they didn't. I didn't really get it. I mean, it was kind of weird.
and another and this
It
brings
was
up a whole
weird.
can of worms that I don't I was kind of like not going to say it, but since you brought it up, like it brings up the can of worms when the guy was attached to the girl. Like I think you know where I'm going with this. Um, which bathroom do they use? So
Yeah, and
uh,
could they get themselves pregnant?
yeah, like so many questions. I kind of want to know the answer to, but at the same time, I really don't want to know the answer to.
Yeah, and
So
it's weird too because like I think it's like one of the last episodes like they write letters. Did they even write letters back to the school people, or was it only to the princess and them?
I only ever saw her write a letter to the princess and Kiriko.
Yeah, the princess was an
So
interesting character.
yeah, and she had a really cool ability in a world where people uh are either alive or dead, but they're still technically alive. She has the ability to kill people just by looking
Yeah.
at them, and
Would
then
you want to
they
be
just go
dead or
on.
alive in this world?
I don't even know.
I mean,
I don't even know.
well, like
Because the thing is, while you're alive, it's nice, but even after you die, you're still alive.
you might as
So
well just live as long as you can until you die.
yeah, yeah, just live. I mean, I would say like maybe
Like, because the thing is,
I
like those
want to
people
live
that
until I'm in
like
my mid 20s and then die, so I can't age
is
anymore.
life so miserable? Like all those people just had to show up there and kill themselves. Like I'd rather just live my life, and if I die, then I'll show up there. You know?
Yeah, and the thing is too, I wish they had have expanded more on why their lives were so miserable. Like, was it like
Well,
where
yeah, that's what I'm
living
saying. That's
being
why it could have been a whole
persecuted? Was
arc in
there?
itself. It, like that
Yeah,
really could they could have had like a whole arc where like they met these people and then like they realized that these people were there to like sacrifice their life and then maybe like something like
yeah. I mean, like, were these people like part of an underprivileged class, and like is that how like
because
a
like
lot of like humans like cities and stuff are working for the living and people and stuff? And
yeah, and they
feel
kind
me?
of abandoned that premise so early of like I mean the show really touches on it like a lot though is like being alive and dead, being a monster and not a monster. Like what does it really even mean? Even like with the later like the final arc which is like living in that artificial world, like where everything repeats, almost is kind of like not so bad. I get it's because that's almost preferable to like what's so bad about that world is just like your memories reset, I guess. But like some those main characters' memories don't even reset. It's just like the side
Yeah, like the
characters.
main characters, like they like since they don't
So
have any
like
memory of that stuff, like what was happening previously, like they basically had perfect lives.
yeah, and they could live there
Uh,
indefinitely, and they don't
yeah,
age, and
I
yeah.
yeah, I and they get to live the happiest moments of their
So
life,
like
all like basically for all of
which
eternity. In
I
a
know
way,
there's
that's
still a lot to get into here, but I would like to take this time since we're talking about the last arc to mention what happens in the seventh and eighth light novel. and kind of what the ending of the show kind of is or becomes, at least in the light novel. So, like, later on, it's established. Oh yeah, by the way, what's her name? D. She comes
Yeah.
back to life and has a real body too, and like she has a real
Well,
body, of
she
course,
that
at the end.
happens in the anime.
Well, I'm just saying, like, but I'm saying with that implied, like her arc is that she wants to save other people that were trapped in wishes that are similar to hers, and like it all leads eventually to like a another type of like pocket dimension, if you will, like similar to the one that we saw in this arc, but this new pocket dimension is actually inhabited by like a character who says that she's going to save the world. And she's kind of like a parallel character to I in a way. But the very interesting thing about like kind of this is where like the light novel's like ending story goes to is that this pocket dimension that is like accessible is actually like a wish that was a granted, which basically is an afterlife. So it's like almost like heaven. It's actually a realm where people can still have babies inside of the realm. So it actually solves the baby issue. And so this character shows up and says, "Oh, when people like want to pass over, they can pass over to this other world where babies are still being born, and it's like an afterworld." And it basically is like saving the world. So like that's where like light novel 8 leaves off is like the existence of this world, and like there's some crazy shit that happens and like with these other characters, but it leaves us with this idea that there is like a way where babies are being born that exist in some realm of existence that is accessible to like the world. So like again, it's just more of like God didn't truly abandon this world. I think he just granted a fuck ton of wishes and it just kind of became a chaotic mess.
Well, maybe somebody's wish was that God abandoned the world, so that wish led to all the other wishes.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, like whose wish trumps another wish. And then like so I don't know what happens in the final light novel. Like I
Maybe in
said,
the final light novel, somebody is smart enough to make a wish that none of that stuff ever
so I
happens.
don't know
So,
if like she actually saves the world, but like there is implication that the world definitely will live on like with new life and that is already established. So that fact alone still irks me today about the series, but again, that's not really what the anime covers. That's not what the anime is. This is just all for like what this story could have been type of talk and like
well,
where it was going. So I
well,
think
we'll figure out the rest of it when it gets a season two.
yeah, and like I honestly think it's a fucking shame that they didn't do a season 2. Even if it was
Wait,
all OVA, I would be
when
okay
did
with it.
when did this show come out? It was
2013.
20. I mean, we're still in the realm of possibility that this could get a season two.
I mean, anything's possible. You know, my original hope for the series is that it was going to be about them battling God.
You know what? I would say it would go against the whole I don't know, the whole feel of the show, because outside of Hampney's arc at the beginning, there really isn't a whole lot of like fighting that's happening at all.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you think God sucks in this show though?
I don't know, because we don't ever, I mean, we don't
We
really
see
know
what
a
we
whole
see
lot
the
about the
wishes of
background.
God.
I mean, he's granting everybody's wishes, so I mean, I can't really say whether it's a good or a bad thing. I know I have wishes that I have a wish I would like granted. Um, basically, I would wish for a million wishes. I wonder if the God would have, give me that wish, and
I
then
don't
from
think
there
so.
I would, huh?
I don't think so.
I mean, there doesn't seem to be any real rules on wishes,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I don't there's so many just questions I have. And like, man, it's just it's sad though because the manga like the thing is the manga got canceled, the anime got canceled. But the thing is this anime from people that saw it is well reviewed by fans who watched it. I guess it just wasn't popular enough. It just never got picked up. The light novels weren't that
well,
popular. They were kind of like nonsensical. Uh,
Well, a lot of things with with light novel adaptations, especially, it all the anime getting greenlit for a season two would depend on how well the
mhm.
light novels are selling, because the anime
Exactly.
is
That's what I'm
basically
saying.
just an advertisement for the light novels.
And that's what I'm saying is like I guess this the way they were going, it just wasn't popular enough. But um, yeah, I mean we've talked a lot about kind of that stuff. I guess let's talk just kind of more in depth. I haven't even really felt like we've talked about any. I mean, we talked a little bit about some of the characters. Was there a character that we really haven't focused on too much? Let me see.
Let's see. I'm looking at the character list now. I think we didn't really talk about Yuri at all. I don't think so.
Who's
I
that?
guess we could Mr. Yuri, the guy who is driving her around and
Oh,
stuff.
Julie. Yeah, I read that. Like the translation is different from English. Like in the Japanese sub, his name is Julie.
Yeah, I watched the dub. In the dub, I just calls him Mr. Yuri.
Got it.
So I guess we could call him Julie for the sake of most people watch listen to this or watch
Yeah, I
this at
didn't even
all.
know there was
Probably.
a dub until I like only could find the OVA in dub when I watched it in preparation for the show.
Uh, was the OVA on Crunchyroll?
I was on VRV, Verve.
Uh, yeah, Verve is where I was watching the dub for this.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where I
so
found the
I
OVA.
Yeah, I mean on Mr. Yuri or Julie, um, I the reason I haven't really talked about him much is because he doesn't seem to do a whole. An important character,
Yeah.
but he seems to show up after stuff has happened. So
Yeah, he's kind of just he's
I can't
there.
he has a backstory that's given during Hampney's whole arc, and then after that he's the bus driver. So he does have a tragic backstory. Uh,
Well,
his wife died, and
he
wait,
like he loses his wife and kids, and then he gets a wife and like a probably even hotter wife than he had, and he gets
yeah,
he gets
yeah,
two kids in a way.
yeah, and actually, I guess three because he's also kind
Well,
of
I guess four
taking
if you
care of
included the baby,
D.
Andy,
Well, no, and
and Alice.
Alice, and yeah.
Yeah,
So he's basically become like the ultimate father figure. But like I said, the reason why I haven't mentioned him much is because think about it. In Hampney's arc, he shows up to save Hampney right before he dies, and then in the school arc, he's not there at all. He just shows up at the end after they already
yeah.
escape.
It's just like
And
the
then
filler bullshit. Like,
in
God, that arc
Ortis,
was so
it's
bad.
yeah, and then in the Ortis arc, it's more about her and
He's just worrying about getting
Mula.
the van repaired.
Yeah,
And can we wait?
yeah.
Why is the van not on the character list? I think the van is like a crucial character to this story.
Yeah, I mean
They're
the
like the
van is
only
actually
people that have a car in the whole series.
yeah, that's weird too. Why?
Remember all those people that like traveled there? Like they all were like nomads
They were
walking
all
on
on
foot.
foot and stuff. Why are they found this car on the side of the road or something, right?
Yeah,
Why is
like
it that is the only car left on the planet?
everyone just abandoned cars that like it, and okay, can we put let's talk about the other elephant in the room. It's only been 15 years and you're telling me that society and the world has changed this drastically? Do you think in 15
Yeah.
years we would have a city with millions of undead in it? Like like I think there should have been a wider span of time. This should have been like 100 years after. Why did it have to be 15? I guess for there could be people that were alive and it would make sense, but 15, I don't think 15 years is enough for any of this shit to go down.
Well, maybe somebody made a wish that stuff would just happen really quickly.
I'm just saying, like, 15 years, like, the state of the world, which I know it's in, like, okay, so, like, in the lore, like, I guess there was, like, a huge zombie apocalypse, so we're supposed to believe that, like, a zombie apocalypse happened that was so bad that, like, because, like, a lot of people died and they became, like, pure zombies, which we don't see a
Yeah,
single pure zombie also in the entire anime or any of it. We never see those zombies. So like, are
I think I
the
think I
pure
think people
zombies
are
just eradicated?
misremembering it or something. Because technically everybody in Ordis is a zombie. They're
Yeah, but the
living
thing
dead.
is, but the thing
So
is, they don't become like pure zombies unless they like go completely decayed and they go rotting, and then they become like a zombie like we know zombies. And that's what happened in the lore. Is like they said like millions and millions of people became zombies and like overran these cities and destroyed society, like just like in a regular zombie story. So that plays out in this world, but like by 15 years, like those zombies, like the worst thing you're gonna run into in your travels like is like getting kidnapped to go to school and what else happens on their travels? Oh, they run into
uh,
like a bunch of gravekeepers getting spawned at like crystals.
yeah, I mean, like that
Not a
part right there
single like
still.
not a
It's that
single
that
like
whole
group of
I don't know
zombies.
why I thought the gravekeeper part was still kind of comical. It was like it was so out of place. It was so out of place, and it showed
It
that it was
adds
kind of being.
nothing. It literally adds nothing. It actually makes the gravekeepers look not
uh,
as cool. They're not as special. They're not as unique.
yeah, I
They're
wish
just
they
like
had kept it mysterious
it's
because
it's
like, when
kind
it
of
was
like
mysterious, it made them seem ominous and
it's
stuff.
kind of
But
like getting like a cool character in like a game and then like playing online and everyone else is using that same character and you're just like, man, this is not even
no,
like cool now.
I would say it's more like when you're playing a game and like you keep on hearing all these legends and myths about this final boss, and then you get to the final boss and you one shot him. I'm like, oh, there goes the legend. So,
Yeah,
uh,
like it felt so out of place and it didn't add anything to the lore or the story.
it was funny. It was
It was
funny
like
enough for me to
it
remember
was
it.
a shitty.
I'm like, oh, that's how gravekeepers happen.
Like that
It just
whole
happened.
was that like a whole episode? Like they like she just
Yeah, it was the
runs off
episode
and
where
leaves.
yeah,
Yeah,
she
she
abandons the baby and then she just goes and just sits in a hole and like I guess waits to for something to happen.
that seems like like that seems like a pointless side quest in a video game that you just be pissed off you like you had your time wasted to do that side quest. Doesn't it? They're like, "Oh,
Uh,
we made you do this side quest for you could get the lore on the gravekeepers." And you're like, "Well, this is bullshit and a waste of my time."
yeah, I mean, like the thing about Scar, is she thought that nobody was coming for her, but she's literally the most top tier waifu on the planet at this point, like literally on the planet. So of course they were coming after her, but
Yeah. Like that
it's
whole episode that's probably I don't want to say it's the worst episode. Well, it might be the worst
actually
episode.
it was entertaining. It was something that it was
But
I
I
think
think it's still
it was
more
just so
entertaining than
out of
that school
place.
episode.
Yeah, the school episode was just kind of boring, but
Yeah.
it did get interesting at least for a little while, and then it just at the end when you see Alice getting a shootout with the teacher, and he's just able to magically just shoot and hit all of her bullets with his bullet.
And like
I
I don't
thought that was kind
understand
of
the
awesome.
point of like their so like are we supposed to believe all these people got their powers because they wish for their powers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess people were just wishing for powers. I mean, I would personally be wish. I mean, I think Hampney made the smartest
Like
wish.
what
Like,
was the
I wish to
explanation
stay
of how
young and
like the
immortal
chick who
forever.
like could kill people? How did what was that explanation on that?
She accepted her mother's wish.
But what was her mother's wish?
Her mother's wish was that everybody would just die.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, like, she and her sister were twins. They were born.
Yeah,
Her
yeah.
twin sister rejected her mother's wish
See,
and
originally
decided
I thought it
to.
was gonna go like the route of like, oh, maybe we need to kill God. But then later when they had the baby, I'm like, all right, maybe this baby is gonna like have the secret to like bringing like life back into the world. But no, the baby absolutely does nothing.
Yeah. Everything is kind of like just placed there to just kind of throw you off the trail, like
Well,
and
like that's why.
it's what makes this show kind of work
Well,
though
like
because
for me, like I think to really enjoy this anime, you have to like think of it less as kind of like a linear like serial anime and more as a like American cartoon where it's like they have these like mini arcs, but like and the events might carry over a little bit and like there might be like these like really good episodes every once in a while. but like at the end of the day, like it's not really going anywhere. I mean,
I
I
think
guess this is going somewhere, but the thing is, even in well, I mean, I'm sure there's like a definitive ending, but like at least even where up to volume 8, like I technically dies at volume 8 too, which that's a whole different
really.
rant. She kind of does, but kind of doesn't. It's there's like a fake like shootout where like she gets shot by Alice, and then like her and Alice are basically getting paired together, and there's like a love triangle. It's a bunch of bullshit.
So she does end up getting with Alice.
Yeah, I would say
I mean,
I would say read the manga, but
it's
there is
kind of
no
implied
manga.
when she brought him back that
Yeah,
she and Alice had a thing for each other.
yeah, and then I
Alice does talk about how like he can only be like a certain way when he's around I and stuff, and
yeah, and like I would say read the manga, read the light novel, but you can't. All you can do is like
I can think about the day where I'm going to be able to
get
read it.
information. I mean, if you learn Japanese, if you know Japanese, then good on you. Like, tell me the secrets of the universe about this. But for us plebs that, know about as much Japanese as chapter 1 of Rosetta Zone, um, yeah. But
Yeah.
anyways, back to the characters. Let me think. I'm looking at this list. We talked about the baby, their backstory. Interesting, I guess. Pointless, pretty much. We've talked about Alice a lot. Who haven't we talked about? I think we've hit on like everyone, all the main
Yeah.
cast. Does it? Because like there's a lot of supporting characters that just are kind of there,
Yeah,
but
they're there for like a episode or two. Like the girl who she can't see but she has spirit vision. I can't remember her
well,
name.
fuck that
Um
whole like that side
that's cool. That's where the most
school
characters
arc.
were introduced probably though.
Yeah,
Um
the school arc was the most. I think that was like volume 3 of the light novel. It's like the most boring. That's why people, the translation project of the light novel stopped at volume 2 because I think they were trying to read volume 3 and that was that school arc and they got so bored they probably just abandoned the project.
uh, yeah, they're like, well,
I'm not shitting
you
you.
know,
And like I
two two
literally read
two
reviews
volumes is enough.
for people that read all the light novels. They're like, yeah, I just skipped volume 3 because it adds nothing to the story anyways. And I'm like,
Maybe those school characters come back later.
yeah,
But
maybe
like
they all
because
show up in the final novel.
the anime seemed to be in a real hurry to just get rid of all those school characters. So you remember they dropped them all off at like that one girl's
Yeah,
house. Like, oh,
it was
they're all gonna be living together, and that's the last for
it was funny because like
you can tell the anime is like, well, any excuse to never have to talk about those
well,
characters
what was
again.
the point of that school anyways?
I don't know, something about getting funding from the government or something.
What?
Yeah, that was actually what they said.
I know, but
Like,
I'm saying like what the fuck? Again, 15 years, you're telling me in 15 years like society is just like so fucking weird when this shit's happening?
yeah, it seems like the government is around when it's convenient for the plot,
And
but
like
otherwise it's implied
especially
that it's a lawless wasteland, and
it doesn't
except
even
for
seem like a
Where
lawless
Ortis,
wasteland.
yeah, but Ortis has an actual government, sort of, but not really, but sort of,
Well, like,
kind of more.
and it's weird though, because her father's like, "You'll never survive in this wasteland. There's nothing but monsters and demons and shit out in this wilderness." And then like they get a van and they just cruise along like nothing. And like
They
her biggest, literally the worst thing that happens to her is she gets kidnapped by a school that wanted to keep her there for funding.
I mean, why in a world where they can just get any wish they want granted? Why didn't the head mistress just wish for more funding?
Just that whole like again, that whole arc was just so pointless. And then like god, yeah, I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it really bothers me. It's just how fucking stupid it is. And then god, the last arc though was so good.
And yeah, I'm looking through this character list. We didn't talk about Rune, and Rune was probably the most important character in the show.
Who?
Rune.
Is that the chick who can breathe underwater?
Yeah. All right, so
I
let's talk
mean,
about Rune. Rune is Rune,
wait,
and
Rune. Who could win? Rune versus the frog bitch from My Hero.
Sue would dominate Rune.
I don't know,
So
man. Can Sue breathe underwater?
yes,
I don't know if that's proven.
she breathes underwater.
I don't know, man. I think Rune could last longer.
No, no. But Rune is the most important character in the show. Without Rune, the show would not have worked. Every episode, I just kept on thinking, man, when are we gonna get more Rune?
Oh, there is a
And
topic I want to talk about in relation to stuff we've mentioned before. So, was I's father a good father? We've talked a lot about fathers, which we might
yeah,
have
we
to do
have.
a father tier list of anime. and
Actually, I'm going to say yes, he was.
even though he showed up at her town, killed everyone she's ever known, and then like threatens her several times, he's a good
Well,
father.
yes. And the thing is, people have to
Okay,
watch the show to understand the
okay,
context of what I'm meaning, because he didn't know he even had a kid, his like her entire life. When he finds out, he like all of a sudden, I becomes the most important thing in the world to him. You remember, like I actually, I don't know if it does this in a light novel or if it's just specific to the anime, but in the anime, like even after he dies, he comes back as like an undead for like one day just so he could spend a day with I as like a normal father. So yes, I'm going to say for the brief period of time that he was an actual father, he was a pretty good one.
okay.
And even before he found out he was her father, even though he was kind of a dick, he did care for her. Like when he when he knew that he was about to come under attack by those thugs, he kicks her off that bridge. I mean, she thought at first that he did that just to be, just because he was a douchebag, but he did that to save her life. And then he ends up getting captured and stuff afterwards.
I'd
So
give
he
him
did.
a solid C.
I mean, I feel like I'd give him at least a B
Where was he
because
for 12 years?
he didn't even know he had a daughter.
Why did
Remember,
he
like
leave her mom in the first place?
I think it's implied that her mom left him because he was looking for her for who knows how long, but
But
like it never
that's the
shows any
thing.
point that her.
None of it makes any sense. Like, especially the whole gravekeeper thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe her mom left him because
No, but
of
her
the whole
mom is what
gravekeeper thing.
her mom literally needs like her own spin-off show by itself because her mom is supposed to be a gravekeeper who's bound by the duty of burying the dead, decides to make her own town of just dead. Doesn't that go against everything about gravekeepers? Also, can we talk about how does a gravekeeper even die? Do they just die like regular humans? Can they bury themselves?
Maybe maybe like when they die, they just cease to exist because they just pop up out of nowhere. Maybe that's how they die too. They just
No,
like
because
kind of like,
all like the gravekeepers shovels at the front of the one place.
oh
Which
yeah.
also, can we talk about that?
Maybe the gravekeeper has to be buried with
But
their own shovel.
what doesn't make any sense, right? Which now that you know that like gravekeepers are literally just like duplication glitch like in a crystal in the backyard. But like now that scene of like all the gravekeeper shovels isn't really like whoa because it's like well they're just kind of like it's probably just one gravekeeper respawning at the crystal and like charging the fucking the tower.
Well, I think the gravekeeper should like just like keep on respawning like for like maybe 20 or 30 days, and then once they have enough, they just storm orders all at once.
Yeah,
And
like is
I
there
will say this much: when they got to orders, like you remember,
well,
like
like
I
that's why
went
like
was
that
going to
scene
the
is so
city to.
impactful. You're like, oh man, look at all these shovels. And then what didn't make any sense? If they hate gravekeepers so much, they literally have like their entire front lawn covered in dead bodies. Like everyone was totally cool with her being like a gravekeeper and them revealing the secret to the princess. They were just totally fine with it, and it didn't make any sense.
Well, I think everybody else in that city would have been really against gravekeepers.
But the
You
people that
remember
were in
when
charge of it
remember
probably were the ones in charge of murder.
yeah, you remember when Scar, like when they were getting ready to go into cities, like Yuri asked Scar if she just wanted to stay at the gate. Scar was like, I would really like to bury everybody in this city right now. I like, damn. It was probably my favorite part in the show. That
And
and
like,
every
okay,
part where
another question. When the gravekeeper buries them, do they just not exist anymore? Because we know, isn't heaven supposed to be full?
is that what happens? So God stopped taking people because like, oh well, we're overbooked. So
And that's like one like idea that's thrown out. But then like later on, like I said, with like one of the other novels, is like there's like an artificial afterworld created in a sense. So and like we also are even in the anime, we're introduced to this kind. It's sort of like an afterworld. Like the only negative of that world is that like time is like in a loop and like it resets. But if you just had like your own perfect version of that, it wouldn't really matter.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions that you know I had by the end, but I think overall I left at least knowing that whatever you think you know, just throw that out by the next arc because something is going to get added to that. Um, yeah, I think too the idea of like why are gravekeepers heartless? But yet some gravekeepers manage to feel. Um,
Yeah.
and is there like some special rule that gravekeepers have to follow?
Well, like that's why it's weird that we don't get a full explanation of like what a gravekeeper really is. My theory is this entire anime is just a simulation from Angel Beats from the Angel Beats computer guy, and he's just simulating this zombie. He's playing a zombie sim in like an artificial world, and
It's not.
and he
It's
programmed the gravekeepers just to be kind of like just for fun.
It's nice how you like link this back into the angel let Mac Academia verse that we created in all of our previous theories.
I think of almost anything. This is like pretty. I could totally see like the Angel Beats hacker dude making this as like a some kind of sim of the zombie apocalypse. Why not?
I actually at this point I couldn't even begin to argue with that because I was probably eventually gonna suggest the same
Because at the end of the day,
thing.
there's too much about this story that doesn't make sense if it's not some kind of weird sim. So like for one, like everything happens just way too quickly, and then like maybe that's what the whole point of the gravekeepers respawning was, to let us in knowing that it's actually a simulation, right? Because and like he even says, like, what's his name, Julie says like, oh, this is like their story routine or something. Doesn't he say some shit like that?
I
So
don't remember.
he says something along those lines, like this is like, it's like they're definitely in a sim, and that's my final theory.
But that's just a theory, an anime theory.
It is an anime theory, and I think maybe we can elaborate on it and put it on the Sunday Without God Reddit, which we are the moderators and basically only members of, for we can shout
The
that into the
moderators
ether.
and only members.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. I mean, unless anyone who listens to this joins and shares their theories, maybe we could probably post this theory in the Angel Beats Reddit, and that one Angel Beats Reddit master will show up and he'll watch this entire anime just to tell us why it doesn't work. He probably hasn't seen it, but I think he would watch the whole anime just for he could like talk about Angel Beats in relation to it.
Yeah, I honestly think that, there's just a lot more, like a lot to unpack with just
Well,
things in the show that I felt like were done
yeah, like that's
really
the thing. I'm
well.
like
And I think
struggling to like gather my thoughts just because there's so many different themes that are kind of in play here, and like it is kind of like talking about like different shows. Like even how we've jumped back and forth between multiple like the multiple arcs. To me, they almost feel like talking about different shows. Like it really feels that way. I know I keep
and
saying that, but I really it's kind of like separated in my mind almost.
I think for the way that the show
I've
was
literally
set up,
in the
but
past, as I because I forgot this anime existed until I logged into my Crunchyroll account and saw this recently. I forgot it existed, but I do remember like parts of it, and I think I remembered like the parts of this as two separate animes because I remembered like the first three episodes, but the ending of this anime I didn't remember that was the end of this anime. Like, so if that says anything,
I I think that the ending to this anime in particular was like the best part of it. Even though I it leaves a lot of questions. I I don't think that, at least for a 12 episode anime, they couldn't have ended on a better arc than Alice's arc. Although, like, just if they had a just like maybe like sort of implied that he was alive rather than outright telling you he's still alive, maybe it would have. I mean, maybe it would have been like a little bit better because it would have just left you with something to think about rather than like questions about how this contradicts everything you thought you knew prior to that. But
yeah.
it didn't take away from the impact of how you felt when he died, well, when you thought he died. So that part for me was like the highlight of the show for me, and
Yeah,
that
and
and
I mean, yeah, I
that and
mean,
of course every scene where our girl Rune is in, because Rune is basically the main character of the show. It's just nobody
yeah,
really
yeah.
knows
So
it.
yeah, basically, so your best aspect is just the kind of end of the show.
And the part where
Is that
Rune
your?
pits her head in a bowl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Remember the scene when she's underwater, the entire scene, and then comes up
yeah,
and says, "Hey,
yeah,
I was underwater."
yeah. That part for
Classic.
me, that was the emotional climax of the show right there.
Well, my emotional climax is when like you see her like half cut off at the edge of the screen when the van drives away when they drop him off and don't even say goodbye.
Wait for Rune.
They didn't even invite any of them on the trip either. You know, they're just like, "Fuck you."
And then they just it was just so funny. Maybe because maybe I'm the only one who thought it was funny that you could tell that the anime was trying to get rid of these characters as quickly as possible. They just drop them all off at this one house and they drive away, and that's the last you ever hear
Yeah,
about
that's what I'm saying. It feels like a filler episode. They literally feel like filler anime characters that are like, "We'll always remember you, like Kakui," and then like you never.
until the credits roll, and then that's the last.
I will always remember you till the end of time, and then
I don't
like
even think any of those characters are in the opening or ending credits at all either, are they?
no, the opening and credits
Like,
are literally just like her father,
yeah, yeah.
who's only in the first three episodes. Which is funny.
Oh
Which
man.
that's especially fucked up too,
It's
because
like the people who made the intro didn't
well,
actually know what the show was gonna be
or they
about.
just read the manga and they assumed that the entire anime was gonna be like the manga, but they didn't realize that they just did the first three episodes and summed up the
Yeah,
entire like.
I'm thinking like somebody just said, "Hey, read this manga, and then from here, make us an intro."
Yeah.
And they did that, and it was. I like the intro.
Yeah.
I like the, but
Let me think. So we're in the best moment category. What was my best moment? Man, that is a tough one. The ending is just really good. Like the ending feels kind of like if it was like an entire anime and like that was like a twist at the end of it, the anime, and like it was set up really well, I think it could be like Angel Beats like kind of level. But because it was like what, one episode, two episodes, um,
Yeah.
and so I really like that moment, of course. And let me think, what else was a good moment? And I guess when her father dies, that was a good moment, and like gives her her last name. That was kind of like a cool
Yeah.
moment. I guess those two moments. Um,
And also that moment where Scar says she wants to bury everybody in Ortis.
yeah,
And
yeah. Which, yeah. Why'd she abandon? Wait, okay, wait. Is Scar a good mother? She does abandon her
hmm.
baby in a car full of strangers.
Well, this is complicated. So,
But you
um,
hate people that abandon their kids.
well,
Scar knowingly walked away from the baby for their for her
oh,
own mental health, and you said that was bullshit and not a good excuse
well, I'm gonna stick by that and say that no, she's not a good mother at that time, but she becomes one later
because
on.
they find her in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, she
What did she do?
basically.
Go to do again?
Hmm?
What did she go there to do? To duplicate herself?
I think she went there to try to die or something. I mean, I don't know really why she went there.
No,
Um,
I don't get it either. I don't.
but
I tried to pay attention. Like I said, I've seen this a couple times, and every time I've tried to like figure out what was happening there, and I just see like a million of those that one gravekeeper guy, and I'm just like,
but
this is really.
it's the first time you really get to see her show more. I mean, it's the first time you see her show like actual emotion and
I
stuff.
don't
So
know,
it was.
man. The OVA when she's at like the spa and her tits are out, and the other chicks are like, "Your tits are so big," and she's like, "Really?" And then she stands up, and you can like see her ass, and like all the other chicks are like, "Oh my god, you're so sexy."
She is like the most top tier waifu in the show, and by far the hottest chick in the entire show. Period.
Hmm.
No, nobody even really comes close to her.
I
She was in a
mean,
league of her own.
most yeah, it's called over 18.
Well, the thing is, I've given like the top tier waifu to a
Well,
lot of
her
characters
mom is
under
pretty
18.
hot.
And
Ai's mom.
no, no, she doesn't even touch Scar.
Well, you didn't see her mom naked in the OVA either.
Well, the thing is
That's how
that
her
if
father
it
meets her mom. By the way, he like stumbles across her naked taking a shower in a waterfall. Right?
is her mom like super emotionless when her father meets her?
No. She's like, my name's this. You want to take a shower with me?
So is like her was her mom always an exception to gravekeepers just being heartless, or
No idea.
well, we'll find out in season 2.
Yep.
Man, so many questions are going to get answered in season 2. It's going to be insane. This season 2 of this show is going to be the most epic hypothetical show I've ever seen.
My this anime should have been like at least like 24 episodes, 2 seasons.
Yeah. And there's no reason why it won't still be 2 seasons. Um as long as you live in denial hard enough, stuff just seems to happen. And that's how I view it. But yeah.
Yeah, so I guess final thoughts. And while I'm speaking my final thoughts, I hope you did pick out the anime we're covering next week because we didn't really talk about it. So my final thoughts on Sunday Without God. I would say we've talked a lot about it, the ups, the downs, the cancelizations, the incompletions. But today we're here to talk about the complete package of this anime. We're talking anime, not manga, not light novels, not anything else. What we have in the 12 episodes plus the OVA, that story I think is creative and interesting. And if you just want something to kind of like make you get into like, conversations with your friends like me and Noob here are having today, if you have them watch it, I think for that reason alone, if I guess if you have people to talk about this show with, it makes it better. But even if you're like an anime fan, this show kind of touches on some points of animes and it makes you do feel things at certain points for the characters. My biggest disappointment is just it's of course so much more that could have been done with it, and it is completely one of those seasonal animes that was just left out to die. And we discussed kind of the reasons for that, or what we think were the reasons with the light novel sales and all of that. But this to me is one of those examples of like an anime that fans, even though it's kind of underground, fans really appreciated this during the time it was seasonal, but it was just lost to time. And yeah, I just think I still would recommend it. If you're into this type of anime, I don't think it's for everyone. And like you said, I think it is easy to not get into in the first few episodes. So I don't blame people if they drop it. But I mean, I think it was a worthwhile experience. What about you?
My final thoughts on the show are a lot of what you just said. It's a show that it has a lot of questions that it leaves unanswered. A lot of what feels like contradictions, but it kind of like hand waves it by introducing the concept of wishes and like I have a lot of criticism for the show, but I also really enjoyed this show. It's none of the criticism I've given, or any of the criticism I can think of that I haven't given, ruined the show for me. It had some really likable main characters. It has like some interesting plots, with the exception of that school arc, which honestly I would suggest just skipping over it entirely. And it was a really enjoyable watch. I enjoyed my time watching the show. It's something that you kind of have to like let it kind of like settle in. One or two episodes is not enough time to really get into the show, because by the end of the second or third episode I was still kind of like a little bit lost. But over time you just like start to really get into it, and you're just glad that you decided to stick with it. If you
Yeah,
stick through the show, I think like the payoff at the end of the show was definitely worth it. So my final thoughts was, overall, great show.
yeah. It's funny if you look on the Crunchyroll on the last episode, people are like last posted in like 8 years ago. And they're like, "Man, this was a great show. Can't wait for season two." And yeah,
Boy, are they gonna be waiting for a while.
yeah, if they're not dead, if they're not dead. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I did pick this show though because it was a female protagonist. That was another reason I chose this show because there's not that many anime that have decent female protagonists, and I think for what she was a pretty decent protagonist. Even though we never really see her fully realize what she wants to do, she's still kind of like you know, a good protagonist for the most part.
Yeah, I kind of liked I as a protagonist.
Yeah,
Thought
and
she was
we don't get
pretty
enough
likable.
female
She
protagonists.
generally, like, characters like that, they come off as being a little too ditzy, but I never really came off like that. So I feel like
Yeah.
she was the perfect combination of spunky and energetic, but also grounded. And yeah, I would say I liked I as a protagonist.
But
I thought she was pretty
yeah, so
fun.
with all that said, let's talk our My Anime review score for this series. I am sitting on a 6 right now.
I think I'm at a 6 too.
We
I
gave
think
High
that
School of
that
the Dead and MM a 6.
yeah, I feel like, yeah, I'm at a 6.
I mean, we gave let's look at our sevens. Elfenlied or Suki. Uh what was the one we just covered last week?
My Second Life
My
as a
Second
Villainess.
Life, we gave that a 7. We gave Psychono a 7. So I mean, I don't think this is quite on the same level as all those other shows. It definitely doesn't have the cultural impact. Most people forgot the show or never heard of this show. So for that, I can't give it a point for that. And for me, I think it is kind of on the same level of like High School and MM. It's just kind of like dumb fun, but like in a different way than those other two shows. Like High School of the Dead's fun because it's just like killing shit and like bitches. MM is just fucking if you hate yourself and you're a social reject with severe like mental problems, then you probably get off on the idea of that show. This show is just kind of like a fun little, almost cartoon like adventure. So I would say it's on that level, a 6 for me. Are we on agreement at that or?
Yeah, I think 6 is a pretty. I mean, it's a pretty reasonable score for this.
Yeah.
I would.
And with that said, what is next week's episode? What are we covering?
Next week we are covering In Another World with My Smartphone, continuing this trend of isekai.
Hmm. Okay.
I think uh, I think you're really gonna enjoy it.
This anime is kind of an isekai.
No,
I
it's
w-
not.
Alice kind of got isekai'd into the other world.
It has it's not an isekai though. It has like an isekai subplot, but
Anyways, yeah. So with that said, we'll be back next week with whatever he said next Friday.
yep. We'll see you then.
Oh my god, man.